Hi everyone, Tony Tonkin here from the Child Protection Party. Just want to have a quick conversation about something that came up today, and I'll be endeavouring to have as many of these conversations as I can through our live feed and through YouTube, because there's a lot happening at the moment, and particularly in relation to registration for social workers. I'll be having a conversation with you about that at some particular time as well. And there's another interesting article that was published in the Advertiser today in relation to the department declaring how wonderful they are at preventing kids from being removed. And so I'll be having a conversation about that perhaps later on today as well. But today, what I wanted to talk about was kids and drugs. So I just want to say to everybody, welcome to CPP TV. Now, I might just have to replay this because I've just noticed that we're having trouble accessing this on our live feed. However, I guess I'll just go through with it anyway, and that we'll see what transpires, because some of this will be placed on our YouTube site, and if need be, I can copy it straight over from there. And according to my software, it all seems to be working right now. So the issue is actually in relation to kids and the use of drugs. Now, this is not about drugs which are illegal. This is about drugs which are prescribed. Now, I've had an issue for a long time about the use of Ritalin and other drugs to help kids supposedly manage their bad behaviour. And I've got a number of clients at the moment who are working with me around this specific issue. And one of the problems, I believe, so there's a number of problems, so let's not get stuck in just the one issue, but certainly one of those problems is in relation to using Ritalin and others to govern and control behaviours. Now, a number of the issues are, number one is that often kids have experienced certain issues in their lives that have caused them to become concerned about their environment, about the way they've been treated, about the trauma that sits in their lives as a result of other people's behaviours, and often they find that they need to act that out in some form or another, which often is damaging or hurtful to a lot of people that are around them. So what we need to do is understand what those particular issues are for kids. Now, in order for us to understand that, we need to have services in place that will help us to work through specifically those issues with children. So one of the best ways by which we can do that is to implement services that are going to meet those particular needs. And one of the issues that we have here at the Child Protection Party is that there are not enough services offered these children in order to be able to meet those specific needs of those kids. And that it's really important to find a way by which we can address those issues. And that often means that we need more services, more counsellors, more people that can connect with young people so that the problems that young people are experiencing can be dealt with. But one of the biggest issues that I've found in this is trying to get the kids to engage, particularly adolescents, with services that potentially are helpful. And one of the ways to accomplish that is to find and discover mentoring services that are available to kids where other youngish people are able to connect with these children so that they can make a connection in their lives that they find valuable, helpful. They have someone that they can look up to, that they can respect, and that can work alongside these people. I know that those programs that do find ways to work with kids in this way are more helpful and are more likely to help them to overcome the anxiety and stress that these kids experience. I think that one of the problems that we have is that we tend to blame adults, we tend to blame parents for what's happening for kids. And certainly at some level, this is not a blame game, but it is about parents taking responsibility for whatever has happened in these children's lives and find a way to address those particular concerns. This is important. But it is important that we don't find ways to drug kids in order to manage their behaviour. Now, kids can always find ways to control their behaviour, that they can use strategies to recognise what's happening to them at any particular time, and they can actually make decisions about how to avoid the bad behaviour that impacts other people around them. So we need to be able to have those conversations, though, with kids to help them to understand what those particular triggers are and how to manage those triggers and how to make decisions that are different. That's one of the challenges facing the work that we do with kids in this particular problem. The other area, of course, is that if we're going to give kids drugs in order to manage a problem, the message that we're giving them is that a drug will solve your problem. So when they grow into further adolescence or adulthood, they're going to then use the drugs as a means to help them deal with whatever it is that is the problem that they're experiencing. And that basically is unhelpful. And I've worked with people that have had these drugs when they were younger, and they've said to me that this offers them with an answer later on in life as to how to deal with a specific problem. You simply find a drug that's going to help numb how it is you're feeling. And either that is, methamphetamine, and some other drugs, marijuana perhaps, and alcohol, in order to be able to deal with the problem. The reality is that kids need to find different ways of dealing with these issues when they're younger. So there was a news article on, believe it or not, Sky News, which is not my favourite news network, which I came across today, which I think is helpful just to talk about this particular subject. And here it is.
Let's go to the front of the telly now. This is a story that I think a lot of Australians will be most upset about tomorrow morning. Gen anxiety. 220,000 kids on mental health meds. More than 220,000 Australian children are taking antidepressants and other prescription drugs for mental illnesses. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare data reveals that among them are 2,312 toddlers and preschoolers who were prescribed drugs for mental health related issues in 2018-19. They're quoting an expert here. There are high levels of family breakdown, uncertainty over employment, and you chuck in the blinder of COVID-19 and it's a climate of worry, said the expert.
Well, there have been reports coming out over the past so many months where you've had GPs saying that they're handing out antidepressants now to children as young as 12. They've had to live through, especially when you talk about the kids who are in Victoria and the lockdown that they had there. They were cut off from all of their friends, they were cut off from family, parents themselves weren't coping, never mind the children. And it's estimated that 1 in 5 children in this country have some sort of anxiety or mental, are unwell, have some sort of mental impact that they're trying to deal with because of what's going on. And there was a shocking story that I read tonight before I came on air, where a mum was saying that her 3-year-old was playing cars, and he was playing, and one of the cars was an ambulance, and she asked him about what he was doing. He was taking the dead to hospital. That's the impact that this has had on those kids. So the question is, as a country, yes, they're throwing millions of dollars at mental health, but where do you suddenly come up with all the psychologists and the counsellors that we need to cope with this demand?
And that's the issue, as I was saying, is that we have issues around attention deficit disorder and ADHD, and we have issues concerning anxiety and stress, and that we're looking for medical ways to deal with those issues. And none of that is helpful. And so the question really that we need to be asking is how are we advocating for kids in a far more helpful way than prescribing drugs. And I've known Ritalin and other drugs that are supposed to deal with a child's erratic behaviour being given to kids as young as 6 months old, which is crazy. And we need to remember that a child's brain or a person's brain continues to develop until around the age of 24. So if we're interfering with the function of that brain by medicalising and by having drugs placed inside the brain that are affecting the proteins and the way those proteins are developed on the synapses and other areas of the brain, we're going to actually impact their growth. Not only are we teaching them that drugs are okay, we're also impacting their ability for their brain to mature and to grow appropriately. So it's dangerous, and we all need to be doing something about it. I think we need to think about it differently, and if we've got kids that have got any of these particular issues, I believe we need to find a counsellor or somebody that can actually work with the kids through the problem rather than medicalising it. So thanks very much for being with me. We've got some other stuff that we're going to be talking about later on in relation to registration of social workers, and also some of the claims made by the department in relation to how they're working with kids in out-of-home care, and what that means in terms of the numbers that seem to be decreasing. So they say we will challenge that later on. So thanks everybody for being a part of CPP TV.